For this for a long time, very much anticipated by most people. International media also here. That's how important the testimony is being viewed by and large. What's your take of what you've heard today?
Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to the viewers at home. Indeed, that day has finally come, and even though there are people who were expecting that former President Zuma might come up with tricks and maybe not cooperate well with the commission. For me, he has actually cooperated very well with the commission. He did not want to waste any time. But what I've observed as well is that he wanted to bring in a political history about himself and his comrades within the ANC, and maybe some of those outside the ANC. And for me, I've seen a person who is trying to say, amongst all the things that have happened in the past, I have been a victim of a conspiracy for a very, very long time to isolate me from the activities of the ANC, in particular leadership. And it has actually gone to an extent where certain individuals wanted to kill him. And for me, I am seeing a person who is creating a posture that says, I understand the terms of reference of the commission. I also know what you want from me. But I want, firstly, for all of you to consider the fact that I've been victimized for a very, very long time. And when the information starts coming out, there's something that I've noted about former President Zuma is that he's able to explain things in a manner that everybody could be able to follow, and he's a very good narrator of a story. And for me, he has been able to take us back, and now he's starting to unpack a number of areas that are of great importance.
So the overarching narrative that he's presenting is that all of these stories around him, corruption, state capture, they're all part of a plot that started in the 90s to discredit him, to make sure that he doesn't ascend to high office, and that he basically is sidelined. And I suppose there's a lot of evidence that he's going to have to deal with, but having set that narrative, people watching will be thinking, it's all part of a plot. That's what this is it. And I suppose this is what he was trying to do.
And indeed, that's why I said that he tried his best to narrate a story from the early 90s, to say there have been people in and outside the ANC who did not want him to ascend to the highest office. And for me, he's creating a narrative that says that if it was somebody else who was in power from 2009 until he resigned, that person wouldn't have been treated the way he's being treated. And that's why he said, amongst all the presidents, I'm the only one who is actually coming to the commission. Other presidents have never been called to the commission. He also spoke about the area that all of us are concerned about is his relationship with the Gupta family. And what he does is to say, even other former presidents had relationship with the Gupta family. Why do you only single me out? But obviously, there are a number of issues that we're still going to hear at the commission that relates to his relationship with the Gupta family and the extent in which it actually influenced some of his decisions.
The way that he spoke about former Minister Ramatlodi, do you get a sense that he's going to deal with anyone that he perceives as an enemy, perhaps people that have come and testified, that he will bring things to the table to discredit them, to make their testimonies less powerful?
Obviously. I expect former President Zuma to mention a lot of people, especially those that have been very vocal for his removal, or those who are not happy with the way things were being done. And if you recall, earlier in the morning, he had a list. He said, I'm putting this aside. I'm still going to come back onto this list. And I would expect him to mention a number of people, and obviously those that were vocal against him. And I also don't expect the list to have any of those people who have always been supportive of him, and that is for obvious reasons.
Could this be a warning to people who might testify in the future or thinking about testifying that, listen, if you've got things in the skeletons in your closet, I'm going to name you?
Well, remember, former Minister Dlamini said, all of us in the NEC have got our own skeletons. And I think President Zuma is saying, I'm trying to choose whose skeletons am I supposed to take them out. And I would expect that a lot of names are still going to come out. And we're going to be shocked. And but some won't be shocked because it will be the obvious enemies of former President Zuma.
All right, so a relationship with a family by itself is not a problem. I mean, I think people have relationships with many people. The nature of the relationship perhaps is what is going to be tested. Is that what might then, because the Thabo Mbeki Foundation has said, listen, we've never introduced him to the Guptas, but even if we had, it's not about knowing the Guptas, it's about what you do with the Guptas that's at question. Do you think the Mbeki Foundation might have to speak a little bit more about the relationship that former President Mbeki had with the Guptas?
In the interest of the Commission and the nation, one would expect the former President Mbeki as well to make his own presentation about the relationship with the Guptas. But I think it's important, Peter, to take ourselves a little bit back and look at what the public protector did, former public protector Thulima Donsel, in the Commission. There was great concern in society about the relationship of former President Zuma and the Gupta family and how they were influencing certain big or serious decisions that government has to take, and everybody was getting concerned. And for me, President Zuma is not only supposed to talk only of a relationship. What for me is important is to look at the extent of that relationship wherein ordinary citizens and his colleagues in the ANC and government had to start raising such issues, to say, we're not happy with your relationship because certain individuals would know that they are going to be appointed as ministers by the Gupta family and not by President Zuma himself.
So let's go now to Mr. Maseko's testimony, where he stated that, you know, he got a call from the presidency. He was told that the Guptas are going to come to him and that he must help them with advertising. The president was very careful, not to say that this conversation never happened.
Yes.
He says he doesn't remember. And he was careful not to say he didn't deal with advertising issues. So I'm just wondering whether he's stepping carefully so that he doesn't perjure himself under oath by saying anything incriminating.
Indeed. I think he has been advised. He got very good advisors in terms of how we should actually deal with certain issues. But what is very important is that when you are involved in a corrupt activity, you would try your best to ensure that you don't leave trails. And I think it's very important that South Africans should not underestimate former President Zuma. This is the person who was running the intelligence of the ANC. And corrupt activities are supposed to happen behind closed doors in the darkness, and you don't have a person appointed to take minutes, because then you're leaving a paper trail. So it's a very complicated and sophisticated activity that would take place in a corrupt environment. But what we need to get to the bottom of is to establish whether it is true that President Zuma indeed did call Mr. Maseko, and then Mr. Maseko had to act on the basis of the instruction from the president.
He seems to be distancing himself completely from the actions of others, saying, I don't know, ask the Guptas, they must answer for themselves. Ask Maseko, he must answer for himself. That he didn't know anything, and there were points in time he didn't remember much either.
There are two possibilities. One is that he might have been directly involved and made sure that there is no evidence, concrete evidence that can be put forward in the commission. Another one would be that certain individuals in the ANC and in government might then also still use his name in order to participate in corrupt activities. But that is exactly what the commission had to establish and develop facts. But the issue at hand is that those that mentioned him always say that we were getting instructions from President Zuma, and Ngwakura Mahlodi says that I was called by Duduzane in order to act on certain activities and I refused. That's why I was axed. So those are some of the issues that one has to dig down until they actually get onto the bottom of everything.
The allegation that is made against former Minister Ramatlodi is a very serious one. And perhaps of all the things that he said today, that could be the problem one if it's not true. And if it is true, it's a problem for former Minister Ramatlodi. It is such a explosive thing to say that one version has to be tested, and at the end of it, there will be a casualty.
Indeed, it cannot be a problem for Ngwakura Mahlodi alone. It can also be a problem for former President Zuma himself. Why would President Zuma not mention these things with his colleagues in the ANC? But to take it further, it is the same President Zuma who appointed Ramatlodi to become a minister. Ramatlodi worked as the secretary of Oliver Tambo, and obviously that was after maybe he was appointed as a spy. So it questions also his own credibility. To say, why then do you appoint a person?
He did say that he hoped that he would have changed, but we're waiting now, as you can see from the screen, for the president. He's going to be addressing the former president, rather, is going to be addressing his supporters that have come out, and some notable names were in the inside there. We saw Desmond Roy, former finance minister, for 4 days, and cooperative governance minister after that. We saw another huge supporter, Kebima Patswe was there, and Nihaus as well. So, and there was claps in the auditorium as the president walked in, and various times when he spoke. How important is it for him to have this show of support at this time?
It's very important, especially for those who support him. What we see is that there are these notable individuals that are going to support him. But we need to establish the extent of support. Are they supporting him because he's guilty? Or are they saying that we have our comrade who might have done wrong things, but we're saying we're supporting him because he's an individual? Or are they actually supporting him to say, let's strengthen the divisions within the party, so that in the party, the notable individuals who are supportive of President Zuma, whom some will say it's a clique of corrupt individuals, should actually be intact. And there are a number of reasons why they would be supporting him. One of the supporters said, I am going to support President Zuma because he has done a lot of good things for us as South Africans. So the support should not only be based on one specific area. There are a number of reasons why certain individuals are supporting President Zuma.
What do you think might still come out? You know, I mean, there were a lot of testimonies that have come through already, and this is just the first appearance. He probably will come again as more witnesses come to the front. What do you suspect might come through later this week?
I think what happened this morning is that some of the information that President Zuma provided was voluntary. He was not asked. He wanted to make a presentation himself. And some of the most important information for me might then come when he's being cross-examined.
Right.
And if he feels that he's now at the corner, he might then decide to release the list so that he should actually paint everybody. And the commission must then end up saying, all of you are corrupt. and not one individual.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and as I said, we're hoping to cross live to just outside the Commission of Inquiry, where supporters of former President Jacob Zuma are waiting for him to come out and address them, but we'll be back right after this.